though the wind may blow, troubles toss you to and fro. Get on your knees and give it time.
You are always thinking, searching, reading, studying, meditating about spiritual things.
Support and Prayers, a ministry by Ivan Gonçalves from the Church of Christ in Belo Horizonte, Brazil.
Welcome to the ministry that's looking for support in prayer. I would like to share with you a sermon, a message, a small message on Genesis chapter 3. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast on the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? It is very interesting that God created the entire world and he allowed the serpent to get into the garden. Some people say that God wouldn't allow that. Some people ask the difficult question, why did God allow the serpent to get into the garden? The God should kill it before getting there. But the reason for that is because God gave the man and the woman a choice. Because we have to understand that God wants us to choose to follow Him. It is very important. Maybe you are raised in the church and you are a Christian since you are born, and you go to the church because someone told you, your parents told you and brought you to the church. But if you take care of that, if you look into your, deep into your heart, do you believe that you are in the church because you chose that? Because you have an intimacy with God, because you have a relationship with Him, and you go to the church because you love God, you love Jesus Christ, you love the church, you love the relationship with them. Is that the reason why you go to the church? I hope so. God, our marvelous Lord, our marvelous Savior, He wants us to choose to follow Him, to choose to obey Him, to choose to obey His commands, to choose to love Him. First of all, think about that. Did you choose to love Him? The second thing we see in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, is that the serpent, Satan, he said to Eve that he made a question to her. And this question was, if God didn't allow them to eat anything, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? It is pretty interesting. Here in Brazil, we have a culture, a very sinful culture. And most people say that they don't want to go to church because God forbids their happiness. And it is pretty interesting when we see Satan say that did God forbid you to be happy? Did God forbid you to try all trees around? So it is very interesting that we know that God forbade Eve and Adam to get in contact with that forbidden fruit, forbidden tree. But the enemy, he says, everything is forbidden. So sometimes there are people who think that being a Christian is to have a very sad life, a life without taste, a life without happiness, because they think God forbids everything. It is wrong, because what God forbids is the sinful life, is the sinful way. And it is necessary we understand that sin is not something good. Sin is something sad that leads us to death, that leads us to sadness, that leads us to fall, that leads us to poverty, to destruction, to spiritual sadness, to spiritual poverty. It is something that destroys our happiness. When we realize that sin is something so bad, something so evil, that we don't want when we understand that, we don't want to get in touch with that. So, think about your life. Is the devil saying to you that God is forbidding you to be happy? God is forbidding you to be free? Maybe you are listening to those words in your life. And always remember that God created everything. God created a lot of things to make you happy. And forbids only a small part of that. Like the garden that marvelous garden, the Garden of Eden, was plenty of trees, plenty of fruits that were marvelous, and the only one was forbidden. You can understand that there are a lot of things marvelous to your life, and the only small part that is forbidden. May you feel the presence of God in your life. Don't forget, keep us in prayer.
Even though the wind may blow, troubles toss you to and fro, get on your knees and give it time.
You are always thinking, searching, reading, studying, meditating about spiritual things.
Support and Prayers, a ministry by Ivan Gonçalves from the Church of Christ in Belo Horizonte, Brazil.
Get on your knees and give it time. They're the